Can you become a crypto millionaire with XRP Ripple this market cycle? How much money would it take? And is it still possible at this stage of the market? Also, I'll be answering the question that everyone has right now. Is now the right time to be stacking and buying XRP? In this video, we'll be diving into the math so you know exactly how much XRP you would need in your bag to be a millionaire when XRP reaches its previous all-time high at either $3.31 or even breaks out to a new all-time high at $5. I'll also be covering the general market environment from the health of the stock market, Bitcoin, and some new and positive developments surrounding the XRP SEC lawsuit, and why Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, is extra bullish and has incentives to make sure XRP wins. Finally, we'll be covering some potential outcomes in terms of time targets for when XRP is likely to hit its previous all-time high and then break out for a new one. So stay tuned to the end of this video. Hello and welcome to the Bull Runners YouTube channel. My name is Paul Light, and as always, our content is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So this is not financial advice. It's not intended to be so. Investing in crypto is risky and requires patience. At no point in time are you guaranteed to make money. We don't guarantee any results, nor are we financial advisors, so do your own research. Investing in crypto is risky and you can lose money also. We also may hold positions in cryptocurrencies we mentioned on the channel, but this isn't a recommendation for you to do the same. So results aren't typical. Don't be typical. Stay bullish, and let's get into the video. So we're going to hop on over to the XRP chart. And as you can see here, if you've been on this channel for a while, or if you've been investing in crypto for a while, and specifically XRP, you'll note that the previous all-time high happened in January of 2018. The 2021 all-time high came in at a whopping $1.97. In other words, that thing was about another $1.40 lower than the previous all-time high. We failed to break out to a new all-time high for quite some time. We've been building a support at around, let's just toss a line on there, at about 28 to 30 cents. And that seems to be a pretty strong and significant support, right? Back here, what used to be a resistance then became a support. And as you can see here, multiple times when we broke below that range here, we sold off once we got resisted, twice we got resisted, three times we got resisted, and obviously back here in 2020 we had the lawsuit, which caused quite a bit of volatility, only for us to be supported there yet again in the lows of 2022 and to range to our 2023 high of about 76 cents, and then for the actual high at 94 cents. Now again, this is on a weekly time frame, so if I just pull that over to a daily time frame, you'll see that there was a massive spike of bullish candle right there. And so we actually started selling off from there, and we have failed to reach that high. So when will these highs come, and is it possible for you to become an XRP millionaire? Because I know it's been slightly slow and slightly boring, right? If we were to look at the price action over the course of this period of time, and arguably from those May lows, we've actually underperformed Bitcoin quite a bit. I'll just go ahead and pull up Bitcoin right here. And as you can see, when I put it on a percentage scale, Bitcoin is actually up 197% over that period of time, even though it recently sold off quite a bit, while XRP is only up 54%. So the good news is, right, you'd be buying at a better price on XRP if you started investing over the course of this last, 6 months, versus something like Bitcoin, which has already made a massive move and really started going parabolic here for a second because of that ETF news from January to March. But currently, the price of XRP is sitting at 47 cents, and basically a half. So this thing has actually, what's really interesting, has failed to break to new lows as of recently, whereas Bitcoin started breaking down. So if I just bring this down to like a 4-hour time frame and come right back in here to these moves, we'll go ahead and pull up that Bitcoin chart again, put it on a percentage scale. You can see that Bitcoin has actually been underperforming XRP, which leads me to believe that there was probably more leverage and there were probably more people interested in investing in Bitcoin. And when they had a profit, they started getting freaked out and taking it. Whereas with XRP, since people really haven't made as much profit, you have a longer, stronger base of supporters, right? And investors. So this is actually a really good sign that the local bottom could potentially be in for XRP. But let's just get to the answer, right? How much XRP would you need to be a crypto millionaire this cycle? And so I'm going to be covering how much you would need of XRP in order to be a millionaire if you bought all of your XRP right now at about an average price of 48 cents. How much you would need if you bought at an average price of 38 cents. In other words, if the market starts to break down, what would that look like and how much would you need to buy? How much would you need to buy at 43 cents would be the average price between those two ranges up top. And then finally, right, if XRP starts to break out above our recent range highs and it goes to 50 cents, how much XRP would you need to be a crypto millionaire? So let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to hop on over here, and currently the price is about 47.5 cents. And when you do the math, it requires about, if we hit the previous all-time high of $3.31, 302,115 XRP if you wanted to be a crypto millionaire. And so at the price of 50 cents, again, if the price started climbing and let's say you were averaging in and your average price was 50 cents, you would need, at the price of 50 cents, about 151,057. If you were to buy at about an average price of 48 cents, you would require about 145,015. Now, let's say the price continues to dump and your average price is 43 cents. That would require about 129,909. And finally, if we reach a low of at least 38 cents in the upcoming months as the summer lulls on and as crypto looks relatively bearish, then it would require about 114,800. Now notice the staggering difference here between 151,000 and 114,000. That's a staggering 36,354 difference. Or if you were to buy all of those tokens today, it would cost you an extra $17,220. So when people are worried about something like this dumping, which has arguably been dumping a hell of a lot less than cryptos like Bitcoin because they've pumped so hard, and we have some seriously strong holders in the XRP community, ultimately you could look at that as an opportunity for a buy, and arguably a lot of buying. So let's clean up the chart here and dive into it, shall we? What I'm looking at here is a lot of just sideways ranging action. Obviously, if we're looking at the price right now, we've consistently seen support and breakdowns into this 46 cent range. And so if we continue to break down, which when I pull up a few indicators, it doesn't look too hot for the price of XRP right now. However, long term, it would be a good opportunity to stack. We've consistently been getting sold off at that 50 EMA. And as of right now, we are trending down. We had two major sell-offs after that spike in July of 2023. And so what I'm really focused on is that next major support range. And when I pull up a VRVP, which is a visible range volume profile, you can see here that we have a boatload of support right here, and then we broke down. So again, when what used to be support would now be a resistance. So what would our next major support range be? And that would arguably be at the 38-cent level. Okay, as you can see here. So a lot of volume was traded here. That's because these are major points of interest. And when you have a cliff and this inversion of volume like this, typically that means that price will move through these ranges relatively quickly. So where would our next major range of support be? The 38-cent range. So if markets remain relatively bearish, then it's arguably a great time to stack between the range of 48 cents to 38 cents. And so when I turn off all of these indicators and focus on, the median price between these ranges, it'd be about 43 cents. And about 43 cents is where you could continue stacking into the market, right? And so you would need less XRP and less capital to really get in. So arguably it could be a godsend. Now, this is not financial advice. Again, it's not me telling you you need to go and buy it, right? But ultimately, if your average price, if you just continue to stack and the market continues to lull through the summer, it'll give you enough of a buying opportunity to bare bones minimum get into this 43-cent range, even if the price dumps to 38 cents. Why? Because you've been averaging in through this entire range here. So again, great opportunity if you're looking to be an XRP millionaire. So the question arises, will we see some decent buy opportunities with XRP at lower prices? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hop on over to the S&P 500. Now, the reason I use the S&P 500 is because it's kind of a nice midline. It's a good indicator for the health of the US economy. If I were to use something like the NASDAQ, that's a bit more on the growth side, so it's a little bit more volatile, typically pumps a little bit harder. And then on the flip side, the Dow Jones Industrial Average typically sees a little bit less volatility, typically lags the S&P 500, doesn't pump as hard. And so the S&P 500 is kind of a good middle ground, if you will. And so I typically use this guy. Now, in most scenarios and environments, as you can see here, the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones are positively correlated. Now, what that would mean is, and I'm just going to go ahead. So this is the S&P 500 index that I'm looking at, and I'm going to go up and pull the DJI or Dow Jones Industrial Average up. And as you can see here, right, if I were to buy, for example, the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 on March 13th of 2023, okay, in one period of time up until July of 2023, I would have made 18% on the S&P 500, and on the Dow Jones I would have made about 10%. So which would you rather hold, right? And then when, for example, they dumped, one dumped to about a 5% gain while the other was at a break even. So it typically goes to show that the S&P 500 gives you better returns. You're just investing weighted in the average top 500 companies in the United States, so on and so forth. It's hard to pick winners for the average person, so instead you just invest in all of them, and then the big ones make up for the majority of the gains, and then the smaller ones are the ones that aren't as competitive in that top 500, typically lag and don't really do much for you. Even in really positive bullish environments, they don't perform as well as the best performers, which is why people invest in index funds, if you will, right? But as you can see here, they both went for lows and then for a lower low, and then started pushing up and higher. And so they're very positively correlated, especially even back here. And all the way through this range from the lows of 2023 in October until they started deviating. Now you can see right here, one would outperform the other for a bit, then the other would outperform the next, so on and so forth, but they're pretty positively correlated. One goes down, the other goes down, one goes up, the other goes up, so on and so forth, right? It just seems that the dips on the Dow Jones are typically deeper, right? In other words, this index is weaker. Now, we're looking at Dow theory here, and so it's good to track index strength versus the others. In other words, if you start to see a divergence of indicators, something might be off in the markets, and the market's telling you something. It's kind of like if, I typically wake up in the morning and I feel totally fine. I'm really alive and awake. I'm feeling healthy. I get after my day. And that's just the norm for me over a sustained period of time. But then one day I wake up and I start to feel a little bit more under the weather. And so I can just go about my day and say, oh, everything is fine and normal, but my body is telling me something is off. It's an indicator that maybe I need to take a little bit of a break, right? And so right over here, and in particular, I'm on the hourly time frame, you can see that they're positively correlated, right? Except, and this is where the divergence starts to happen. Both try to break to new all-time highs right around here, right? While the S&P 500 gaps up and does put in an all-time high, while the Dow Jones puts in a lower high, as you can see here. So higher high on the S&P, lower high on the Dow Jones. Then what's really interesting and unique is the Dow Jones is now trying to follow or lag the market and rally after the S&P 500. In other words, in this moment in time, the S&P 500 continued rallying when the bottom came in for the Dow Jones on this blue line. The S&P 500 rallied to its all-time high here at 5,500. Okay, then started dumping. And look at what's happening with the Dow Jones as it's starting to climb. In other words, now they are officially negatively correlated. And when I go ahead and toss up that dollar index on there, and I'll go ahead and do that. Now we're going to toss the dollar index on there. The dollar index is typically negatively correlated with the S&P 500. In other words, the dollar index typically dumps while the S&P 500 pumps. And then when the S&P 500 dumps, the dollar index climbs. Why? Because people are selling their risk on assets to hold assets that would typically be more liquid in a negative or bearish environment, right? In a bearish environment, cash is king, and I can do whatever I want with it, but it's very hard to sell stock in a very negative or bearish environment, at least for the price you want, which is why prices dump like crazy. Then what happens, right? Again, S&P 500 climbs, and look at this, dollar index down. Now, but what's super interesting and just off and weird is as we started dropping on the S&P 500, look at this positive correlation on the dollar index. So I'm getting all of these indicators and signals that something is off now in the market, and it might be a good time to de-risk, or better yet, in the case of Bitcoin and crypto, right, that we're starting to see weakness, and potentially crypto is indicating that weakness sooner rather than later. In other words, crypto might be a leading indicator. So I'm going to go hop on over here to the Bitcoin chart now, and we are going to look at that. Okay. And then we're going to track all this stuff and news and yada, yada, yada. But stick with me here. So the first thing I noticed about Bitcoin, obviously, before this video, was that we were seeing a lot of weakness and selling. Every single time Bitcoin tried to rally, right, and we're on a daily time frame, so this is quite a few this is quite a period of time now, about 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks. Every single time Bitcoin tried to rally, you would just see a crazy wick on the upside and then sell pressure, and then you'd see a bearish engulfing candle. And every single time Bitcoin rallied yet again, what would happen? Big bearish engulfing candle, and then you get a very weak candle and a second weak follow through. In other words, this couldn't even follow through to the previous range high on the wick over here. And so these are inside candles, only to watch Bitcoin break right back down, see massive wicks to the downside, and then finally what I believe would be local capitulation. Everyone kind of just gave up on their positions, and Bitcoin in a single day crashed from 63,200 all the way down to 58,400, and then got bought on a wick. Now the good news, okay, as we are currently tracking this market, so it's safe to say markets are looking a bit weak right now. And the question is, are things ready to rebound? And better yet, you're probably asking, right, by now, when is XRP and when will Bitcoin hit new all-time highs? I'm not too sure, but stick around to the end of the video and we'll give you some clues. The first thing I want to cover now, going from the Bitcoin talk into leverage, I'm going to hop on over to coinglass.com, and I'm going to hop on over to long and shorts. Or excuse me, liquidations. We're going to go to liquidations, okay? And we're going to go to liquidation map in particular, not longs and shorts. Then from there, I'm going to go down to the liquidation map in particular, okay? And I'm going to turn off, you can turn off OKX Bybit if you'd like. And I am going to put this Bitcoin deal on a 7-day time frame. And as you can see here, the current price of Bitcoin is at about 60,765, which is denoted right here. Okay. On the left-hand side, you would see as I drag this thing over to the left, right, that if Bitcoin were to hit the price of $58,275, about $1.19 billion of futures positions, perpetual futures, would be liquidated. On the flip side, if I drag this over to the right, about, at the price of 63,500, $2.4 billion of shorts would be liquidated. That means people are betting that the market's going to go down. So if the price pumps up to 63,000, then guess what? They are going to get liquidated. They would be wrong, and the people on this side would be right. But what I'm really after, and I want to focus on, if I can just, I wish we could get rid of these lines here. Maybe we can. There we are. What I really want to focus on is just how much people are stacked on the short side. These would all be short liquidations. In other words, at 64,000, about $3 billion, 64,400, $3 billion of people would be, liquidated, or people would be liquidated for the equivalent of $3 billion. And over here on the long side, only 1.25 billion from 58 to 57,000. So it's really a tremendous weight that the short sellers have right now. They are currently in control. The bears are in control. And so looking at this type of liquidation event, right, would like to wait another couple days if I'm trying to enter a long position on something like this. The good news is I do see a lot of support right in this range here between, 61,000 and 60,000, 59,000. Ish. So there is a lot of support here, and it is possible that we start to climb a little bit. That doesn't mean XRP is going to, and it doesn't mean that markets can't go lower. It simply means that this capitulation event might have already happened, but the trend might continue on downward. And there are obviously a lot of bears versus bulls right now. So that being said, let's get into some of the news. So if you've been following the case, it's obvious by now that XRP is not deemed a security, and ultimately the SEC and XRP or Ripple are trying to settle the case now. And so here's the latest news on that. This happened days after the SEC lowered its demanded penalty from a whopping $2 billion to $102.6 million. This came in response to the Ripple's legal team, which demanded a lowered penalty to the tune of no more than $10 million. And basically they cited Terraform's settlement with the SEC. The SEC is firing back, saying that that's not correct. You're definitely due more. But to make a long story short, in typical cases of settlement, right, it's kind of like if you go garage selling or you're bidding on a product. Someone who's on the sell side is obviously going to ask for the majority, right? And then typically, if you're a good negotiator on the buy side, you're going to ask for a far better price, and you typically meet somewhere in the middle. So if the SEC is saying they want, $100 million, and by the way, getting it lowered from $2 billion is pretty impressive down to $100 million. Obviously, that's only 5% of the original asking amount. But here's the reality. If they're asking for 10 and the SEC is demanding 100, they're probably going to settle somewhere in the middle or just below that. I don't see a situation in which the SEC can't, start to settle, because they've started to play ball with Ethereum now, and in particular, it's become a major voting issue. It says former President Donald Trump, Biden's presumptive November opponent, has recently seized on crypto as a potential election year wedge issue by making increasingly explicit statements in support of the industry. And so in response, obviously, I would assume, right, that now the SEC has faced some pressures not only from bankers and the BlackRocks of the world who want an Ethereum ETF, but also the administration in the White House is starting to feel that pressure, because they saw how much of a major issue it was for Americans, to the point where the Biden administration rehired a crypto advisor critical of the SEC. In other words, they were in favor of crypto. She is considered to be relatively pro-crypto, at least compared with other voices in the Biden camp. And by the way, her name would be Carol House. Just weeks ago, for example, House appeared to criticize the Biden administration's slow-moving progress on creating a clear regulatory framework. Let me repeat that. We've struggled for years now where other, industries get clear regulatory frameworks. Crypto has really struggled. And I don't understand what the politics have been in Washington, or with the regulators, but it doesn't seem that they're really aiming to protect people because they failed to provide clarity for companies to actually registered and do business in the States, which leads me to believe one thing. There are conspiracies. There are people that wanted to keep crypto out of the ballgame. And who wouldn't if your whole sole power was built upon the almighty fiat currency, the US dollar, and then other currencies and other technologies come and step into your house, it's going to piss you off. So I can see why there was pressure in Washington to keep it out. But now, right, that they are softening and allowing for an Ethereum ETF to be approved, why would they continue to fight XRP and Ripple? It's only going to look worse for them, and ultimately they're not going to have a fighting chance. So eventually they're going to have to settle. They're probably going to have to settle for less than you would think, which leads to very positive news. But in a very bullish or bearish market environment, even bullish news doesn't really matter that much. In other words, if XRP pumped really hard, and we'll get back to the chart right here, really hard into some positive news, maybe similar to what happened on July 13th of 2023, but we're in a very bearish environment, that would probably be a good time to take a little bit of profit off the table and wait for a better day, or arguably just dollar cost average through a range. Because if we continue to break back down to that 38-cent range and then even potentially down the 30-cent range, those would be insane buying opportunities that would allow for you to buy a heck of a lot less of XRP and ultimately maybe reach that goal of being an XRP millionaire. Now for the question of when will XRP reach that range of $3.31 again? And finally, I'll answer the question that if you were able to be a millionaire because XRP goes to $5, how much XRP would you need to buy at each of those previous ranges that we talked about? So we'll get into that at the very end of the call, which arguably, right, would require less capital because the price is going up more. But we're talking about that first, that major previous all-time high of $3.31. And so I'm going to try to figure out when, and I'm going to show you what we found. I'm going to go back to the previous all-time high on XRP. As you can see here, that was at $3.31. And in this cycle and scenario, Bitcoin had already reached near its all-time high, okay, before XRP actually started pumping. So if I were to take a tool right here and go from this all-time high to this current all-time high on XRP, it was about a 19-day difference. In other words, XRP lagged the Bitcoin market. Okay. Then we watched the market again for the next high in 2021. And as you can see here, they actually peaked at the exact same time. But I will make a note of and mention that XRP lagged Bitcoin quite a bit. As you can see here, through this range, Bitcoin was trending really, really strong while XRP was just ranging sideways, right? For a period of 130 days. In other words, Bitcoin was trading up and to the right, making new all-time highs for that entire period of time, while XRP, guess what, lagged the market. And then in a series of a very short period of time, and arguably only 9 days, XRP pumped like crazy, okay, to its most recent high at $1.96. In other words, XRP again lagged Bitcoin. Yes, they put in their all-time highs around the same time, but it was really lagging its technical highs here. And so XRP typically lags, but it doesn't lag by long. And I would argue between 10 to 30 days. Okay. In other words, when XRP is chilling in a range and Bitcoin is pumping to new all-time highs, Bitcoin can continue moving. But eventually, when XRP starts to reach this range again, and we'll turn the Bitcoin chart off and go back to a log scale, when XRP starts to reach this range of 75 cents and then breaks above this dollar range again, you better get ready, because it's highly likely it's going to at least go back to this $1.97 range. And then finally, this bull market cycle, I don't see any reason, especially with positive news around that lawsuit, and maybe even potentially, ETFs on XRP, where it couldn't go to at least $3.31. So finally, let's get into it. Okay. You better start investing while things are cheap, because it looks like it might just break out sooner rather than later. And ultimately, if Bitcoin puts in its all-time high, sometime closer to the end of the year, and in typical fashion, cryptos like to perform at the end of the year. We typically have very slow summer months where things lag and they're just chilling and it's a lull and they potentially drop. But into the end of the year, it's usually the months of September to December and January, things really skyrocket. And it's usually the first year of a bull market, which in this case was 2023. That we start to see a little bit of, upwards price action. And then by the second year, things really start to heat up. So I thoroughly expect things to heat up by, September into the end of the year. And if XRP breaks above these highs at 74 cents, I think it's game time, as long as we continue to see markets rally. It's just things right now are looking relatively weak, which is why I would say it's probably best to dollar cost average in. And if it does hit a range of 38 cents or even maybe 30 cents, right, you would get a really good average price, and it would require a heck of a lot less XRP to be a crypto millionaire at that previous all-time high. So let's get into that $5 range. If XRP hit $5, how much XRP would you need to hold at these current prices and lower prices? So here we have the scenario that if XRP hits a new all-time high at $5, you would need 200,000 XRP. So if you bought at an average price of 50 cents, you would need about $100,000, right, to invest into XRP to buy the total amount you would need to be a millionaire at $5. Then, if you bought at an average price of 48 cents, you would need $86,000. And finally, if you actually bought at an average price of 38 cents, you would only need $76,000 to be a millionaire. So, at the end of the day, I think this really just comes down to having conviction and a game plan. Ultimately, on this channel, we think that XRP is likely to hit its previous all-time high. And if it does hit that all-time high and doesn't see immediate sell pressure, it's very likely going to go to the $5 range, especially on any ETF news in a positive environment where, the big runners are making new all-time highs. There's no reason that XRP no longer having an SEC lawsuit can't do the exact same and go for those new all-time highs. So it doesn't require that much to be a crypto millionaire. It just requires conviction and a game plan. And ultimately, our game plan is to stack our bags in a bearish environment, especially where this thing isn't really truly positively correlated to Bitcoin anymore. In other words, if Bitcoin's dumping a lot, typically XRP has already seen a lot of its dumps. People are just done selling. They want to accumulate. And so I thoroughly expect us to see a lot of accumulation if things dump down to the 38-cent range, and I will be dollar cost averaging. So thanks so much for watching this video. I appreciate your time. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button if you enjoyed the video. Click the like button. Go ahead and comment, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Goodbye.